It's time for a comprehensive national civic uprising.
In this video, Angela Baker of Parkrose Permaculture reads and discusses a recent New York Times op-ed by self-described moderate conservative David Brooks. And David Brooks is hardly a bleeding heart liberal. I'm new to Parkrose Permaculture, the channel. I don't know Angela Baker. This came up in my feed. I watched it. It is just her reading David Brooks's article. But it's a hell of an article, and she's got salient opinions. I thought it was important to share. So why don't we take a look at this together? I may or may not have opinions to chime in, but then I definitely want to know what you think in the comments.
Y'all need to hear what David Brooks said in the New York Times a couple of days ago. If you don't know who David Brooks is, he is a self-described moderate conservative commentator. This might not be the kind of op-ed you would expect from a moderate conservative. The article appeared in the opinion section of the New York Times on April 17th. It's entitled, "What's Happening is Not Normal. So America Needs an Uprising That Is Not Normal." In the beginning, there was agony. Under the empires of old, the strong did what they willed, and the weak suffered what they must. But over the centuries, people built the sinews of civilization, constitutions to restrain power, international alliances to promote peace, legal systems to peacefully settle disputes, scientific institutions to cure diseases, news outlets to advance public understanding, charitable organizations to ease suffering, businesses to build wealth and spread prosperity, and universities to preserve, transmit, and advance the glories of our way of life. These institutions make our lives sweet, loving, and creative, rather than nasty, brutish, and short. Trumpism is threatening all of that. It is primarily about the acquisition of power, power for its own sake. It is a multi-front assault to make the earth a playground for ruthless men. So, of course, any institutions that might restrain power must be weakened and destroyed. Trumpism is about ego, appetite, and acquisitiveness, and it is driven by a primal aversion to the higher elements of the human spirit: learning, compassion, scientific wonder, and the pursuit of justice. So far, we have treated the various assaults of President Trump and the acolytes of his administration as a series of different attacks. In one lane, they are going after big law firms. In another, they savaged USAID. In another, they're attacking our universities. And yet another, they are undermining NATO. And on another, they're upending global trade. But that's the wrong way to think about it. These are not separate battles. That is exactly what I've been saying. This is a single effort to undo the parts of the civilizational order that might restrain Trump's acquisition of power, and it will take a concerted response to beat it back. So far, each sector Trump has assaulted has responded independently. The law firms, they seek to protect themselves. The universities separately try to do the same. Yes, a group of firms banded together in support of the firm Perkins Coie. But in another case, it's individual law firms trying to secure their separate peace with Trump. Remember how quickly Paul Weiss capitulated. Yes, Harvard eventually drew a line in the sand, but Columbia, they cut a deal first. This is a disastrous strategy that ensures that Trump will trample on one victim after another. He divides and he conquers. This is what I've been saying. We need to be a united front of no. We need to all stand and hold the line together, because he can pick us off one by one, but he can't pick off 340 million of us when we all stand together. Slowly, many of us are realizing that we need to band together, but even these efforts are insular and fragmented. Several members of the Big Ten Conference are working on forming an alliance to defend academic freedom. Good, but that would be 18 schools out of roughly 4,000 degree-granting American colleges and universities. So far, the only real hint of something larger, a mass counter-movement, has been the rallies led by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I disagree with you there, sir. April 5th, Hands Off, had 5.2 million people. April 19th had 4 million people. Indivisible and the 50-51 movement are mobilizing millions of people to their rallies. Brooks goes on to say that AOC and Bernie's rallies are an ineffective way to respond to Trump. Those partisan rallies make this fight seem like a normal contest between Democrats and Republicans. I do agree with him there. What's happening now is not normal politics. We're seeing an assault on the fundamental institutions of our civic life, things we should all swear loyalty to, Democrat, Independent, or Republican. You hear that, Chuck Schumer? It's not normal politics. Stop fucking acting like it is and trying to gaslight all of us into thinking this is business as usual. We all know better. Okay, here we go. This is the part that had my jaw on the floor. It's time for a comprehensive national civic uprising.
I don't want to break her stride, but I do just want to jump in here and underline the fact that they have now arrested a judge for purportedly aiding and abetting some illegal immigrant, right? They've arrested a judge, Kash Patel, and so that's what's unfolding live. It's flagrantly illegal what they've done, and it does feel like this crisis is escalating.
It's time for American universities, law, business, nonprofits, and the scientific community and civil servants and beyond to form one coordinated mass movement. Trump is about power. The only way he's going to be stopped is if he's confronted by some movement that possesses rival power. People throughout history have done exactly this when confronted by an authoritarian assault. In their book, Why Civil Resistance Works, Dr. Erica Chenoweth and Maria J. Stefan looked at hundreds of nonviolent uprisings. Y'all know I'm a big fan of Erica Chenoweth's work. These movements used many different tools at their disposal: lawsuits, mass rallies, strikes, work slowdowns, boycotts, and other forms of non-cooperation as resistance. These movements began small and built up. They developed clear messages that appealed to a variety of groups. Remember, I said broad-based coalition. They shifted the narrative so the authoritarians were no longer on permanent offense. Sometimes they used nonviolent means to provoke the regime into taking violent action, which shocks the nation, undercuts the regime's authority, and further strengthens the movement. Think of the civil rights movement in Selma. Right now, Trumpism is dividing civil society. If done right, the civic uprising can begin to divide the forces of Trumpism. Chenoweth and Stefan emphasize that this takes coordination. There doesn't always have to be one charismatic leader, but there does have to be one backbone organization, one coordinating body that does the work of coalition building. And God knows thus far, it's not been the Democrats in Congress. It's not been the DNC. There has been no real cohesive opposition from Democrats at all. There are individual Democratic electeds doing really good work, but they are having to align themselves with nonprofits and work with them, because Democratic leadership cannot form a cohesive coalition to stand up against Trump, at least not thus far. In his book, Upheaval, Jared Diamond looks at countries that endured crises and recovered. He points out that the nations that recover don't catastrophize. They don't say everything is screwed up and we need to burn it all down. I'm looking at you, accelerationists, now. They take a careful inventory of what is working well and what is working poorly. Leaders assume responsibility for their own share of society's problems. Remember when I did that whole video on how we don't need to burn it all down, we don't need revolution, what we need is to retrofit what we have. That historically, that's more successful, it's more conservative of resources, it is much more likely to succeed, to reform, to retrofit, rather than to lead to revolution. This struck me as essential advice for Americans today. We live in a country with catastrophically low levels of institutional trust. University presidents, big law firms, media organizations, and corporate executives face a wall of skepticism and cynicism. If they are going to participate in a mass civic uprising against Trump, then they have to show the rest of the country that they understand the establishment sins that gave rise to Trump in the first place. They have to show that they are democratically seeking to reform their own institutions. This is not just defending the establishment, it is moving somewhere new. People have no trust in these institutions because they work for the super rich, not for the working class. Owning their sins, admitting the way that they contributed to the problem by supporting the billionaires would go a long way. Brooks says, let's take the universities. I've been privileged to teach at American universities off and on for nearly 30 years, and I get to visit a dozen or two every year. These are the crown jewels of American life. They are hubs of scientific and entrepreneurial innovation. In a million ways, the scholars at universities help us understand ourselves and our world. I have seen it over and over. A kid comes on campus as a freshman, inquisitive but uninformed. By senior year, there is something impressive about her. She is awakened, cultured, a critical thinker. The universities have performed their magic once again. People flock from all over the world to admire American universities. But like all institutions, they have their flaws. Many have allowed themselves to become shrouded in a stifling progressivism that tells half the country your voices don't matter. Through admissions policies that favor rich kids, the elite universities have contributed to a diploma divide. If the same affluent families come out on top generation after generation, then no one should be surprised if the loser kids want to flip the table.
Okay, this is another key point in the op-ed where he goes into how the solution here needs to be two-pronged. Check it out.
In other words, a civic uprising has to have a short-term vision and a long-term vision. Short-term, stop Trump. foil his efforts, pile on the lawsuits, turn some of his followers against him. The second is a long-term vision of a fairer society that is not just hard on Trump, but hard on all of the causes of Trumpism, one that offers a positive vision. Whether it's the universities, the immigration system, or the global economy, we cannot go back to the status quo that prevailed when Trump rode down the escalator the first time. I'm really not a movement guy. I don't naturally march in demonstrations or attend rallies that I'm not covering as a journalist. But this is what America needs right now. Trump is shackling the greatest institutions in American life. We have nothing to lose but our chains. When I read that line, it's time for a comprehensive national civic uprising, I was like, oh yeah, I got to share this with y'all. And then later on, when he talks about the fact that we have to reform the systems, we have to have accountability, we have to have a dream and a positive vision to work toward of a better America that works for working class people. Yeah, here I am agreeing with David Brooks. Absolutely a great opinion piece. You should share it widely. It's what we need to hear. And then, of course, we need to act on it.
I agree with this op-ed, and I really particularly like that ending piece there where he talks about not only do we need to fight this immediate fight, we need to come together and stand up and resist this power grab that is underway and accelerating. But we also need to be actively thinking about the ways in which we need to retrofit our system, right? Part of the reason that Trump has come to power is because we all sense how broken the system is and how unfair the system is. And he rode that wave of resentment into office a first and now a second time. And I think people are starting to wake up. So job one is wrestle our country back from these douchebags. And step two has got to be, you can't just sit back and pat ourselves in the back and say, okay, now let's let everything get back to normal. Normal has got to become more equitable. And that is longer term, more three-dimensional planning. We need strong leaders with the right vision that we can hold accountable to do that. It's not like I can wave a magic wand and make that happen, but we can't focus on the former without also creating the need, creating the space for that secondary longer-term need in our minds, because it's not enough to just win the country back. We then have to fix the country. Let me know what you think in the comments.